we went out there. It was 2016. Me and my brother went out there, met our buddy in Cotopaxi, and went for a hunt. 9 days in the mountains, didn't see or hear a single elk. And I'm like, man, this sucks. We didn't see any elk, but I'm like, this was my first time out west, and I absolutely love it. I'm like, I'm doing this from every year. I'm going to figure out a way. I'm going to work overtime. I'm going to take extra jobs, save up my vacation time to only use it in September, and just take the month off and go out there and do what I can. So I started doing the solo hunts and everything out starting 2017. And whatever I figure out I'm going to do, I just put a game plan together, and that's my plan for that September, is to either go out and go try and get another elk or mule deer or caribou or whatever hunt I plan.
Yeah. And so when you first started going out there in 2017, going solo, like that's a trip in its own, like trying to figure that aspect of it out. It's one thing to, plan your first like DIY hunt, I guess, out west, and then to add in the whole solo aspect makes it that much more difficult, I'm sure.
Right. And people thought I was crazy for wanting to drive across the country by myself. And I'm like, hey, I have 3 weeks. I can take my time, figure it out. We got pretty good technology now. Google Maps is very helpful.
Yeah.
And it just set a destination and start driving.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it makes it simple. I know it's like, yeah, no matter where you want to go, just put it on the map, or even drop the pin on the map and hit go. And
yeah.
helps you get around traffic. It helps pick.
Yeah, and a lot of trailheads don't have addresses, so dropping a pin and it brings you right to that trailhead, and you're like, man, this is great.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, no, that definitely helps out a lot. And so where'd you say you went for the first year when you went out there?
So 2016, when we didn't get anything, that was in Colorado. And then I told my brother, I'm like, hey, I'm coming out again. I'm going to do this every year. And he's like, hey, well, if you're going to go to Montana, because I was talking Montana, and he said, if you're going to go to Montana, I've been there before, go check out this one area. So that was my first time solo traveling out west. And that was awesome. I actually got my first elk that year too. It took 16 days, but I had the time to get it done. And that's when I got my first elk.
What do you think? What was the biggest challenges for you when you started like getting into the elk hunting game and the Western hunting thing? I mean, it sounds like you're a patient person. So like, I mean, the fact you spent 16 days out there is, until you killed your elk that year. But like, what are some of the things that you felt like were like roadblocks, whether mental roadblocks or anything else that you didn't anticipate going into it?
Well, I know when I went out there in 2016, I didn't prepare myself at all. I was thinking, hey, I'm going with a buddy that lives out there, going with my brother. He's got one before. I'm going to they're going to get me an elk.
Yeah.
And that is the wrong mindset. Like, it takes so much research and so much preparation, physically and mentally, equipment wise, looking at maps to actually be prepared for it. So I think my biggest challenge that I see when I actually do get out there is the mental side of it. Because you're going to fail every day, in the morning, in the evening. You're going to get close. Something's going to happen, and the elk are not going to be there, or they're going to spook out, or you might not even find elk. And you're just like, what the heck am I doing wrong?
Yeah.
And I think that just comes with pushing yourself at home and pushing yourself physically to the point where your brain gets involved, and teaching your brain that, hey, it's okay to be beat down, keep on going.
Yeah.
Or knowing your threshold and knowing that, okay, I've been back here for 5 days. Let me go take a night off, get a hot shower, get a hot meal, sleep in a comfortable bed. And then the next morning I'm gonna recharge and head right back out there. So definitely, I would say your mental capacity and how much you can withstand was my weak point, and still is at some points too. So.
Yeah, I think that can be all of our weak points. I mean, and the one thing that is nice, like I started doing longer trips too. Like I would, when I was at my job, and I would take 2 weeks of vacation and block it out. So like I could give myself that time, because I learned that it's like, okay, say you have, 6 days that you can hunt and you just go hard the whole time. Like it's difficult. Like for me, I work better in like bursts, like, like say 4 days of I'll go hard, and then yeah, maybe I need to sleep in a morning or do something,
Right.
or even go into town and find a laundromat that has a shower, and freshen up a little bit, get a good meal,
Sure.
come back. And that's when I didn't start doing that until Idaho in 2019, and that was like, man, that's really nice to be able to do that and give that mental reset, because it is so difficult. And I feel like a lot of people that I talk to just around that go out west or whatever, it's always like, oh, this happened or this happened, and it didn't work out. So we came home early because we couldn't find elk or whatever it was. And it's like, it's so hard to get past that and be like, you just gotta just one more step, each step at a time, and trying to figure that out of what, that it can happen at any time. It's just, you got to put yourself there, and it's not going to be any easier. Even when you have more knowledge, it's still going to be difficult every single year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember just there's times where I'm texting one of my brothers or texting my buddy, and I'm just like, dude, I'm drained. My body hurts. I can't get anything right. I'm coming close. It's not happening. And I'm ready to come home. And they're like, Luke, you drove across the entire country. You spent the money already. You have plenty of time. Hang in there. It's going to come together.
Yeah.
And every day that you do fail, like you learn, okay, I did this one little thing wrong. I'm going to remember that next time. The next day you do something else wrong, or it just doesn't work out. And you just make that mental note. And every day that you hunt, even though it seems like you're failing and failing and failing, you're actually learning and learning and learning.
Yeah.
And when it all does come together, you're like, holy cow, like everything's slow motion. It's always a blur. You always get in that tunnel vision.
Yeah.
And you're like, everything that I learned this past week all just came together in this one moment, and we made it work. And now the real work actually starts, because we're 3 miles back. You're by yourself, and you're like, now it's really gonna hurt.
Well, and it's so true too. Like the mindset that we had, like when I just got back from Montana on this bear hunt, was like we were not finding bears at all. It wasn't like, all I knew about bear hunting was find green. Find green. That's where they're supposed to be at. Follow the snow line. Like it seemed pretty black and white. Well, it definitely wasn't. And like it was like, all right, we got in this area, and there was still snow, and it was just melting, and things weren't green yet, and people were running bears low in this thick timber. And it's like, okay, well, that's not exactly what we expected. So, and we just kept hiking these different areas, and we weren't finding anything. It's like, okay, all we did, we crossed that off. That's not an area where we're going to go. Now let's try this area. You just kind of, you just keep, bouncing through those things and figuring it out. And then, and it's like, all right, well, we've had some nice days, so that, and a little bit of rain, so maybe this is going to green things up. And, and eventually it got better. It was just kind of withstanding that and learning as you went to find those pockets or those things. And, that's kind of what I've found with elk hunting. And it's, I think being by yourself makes that like 10 times harder, because you don't have somebody else there. If you have a good hunting partner that's going to, like, you can boost each other.
Yeah.
If you have someone that's extremely negative, it's better to be by yourself. But
100%.
like
Yes.
I that's why I won't do these hunts with, like, unless I feel like I know somebody pretty well, and I feel like that it's going to, like, we link up on that capacity, and you can see it's not just talk, then I'd be willing to hunt with somebody. But otherwise, it's like, man, because if you hunt with somebody that has a negative attitude, or they see, there's probably nothing over that ridge, so that's not a good, because eventually that wears off on you, and it's not, whether you notice it or not, eventually you start kind of getting into that same mindset.
Right. And eventually you start sleeping in, and you're like, you know what, let's just pack it in. Yeah, absolutely. I'm the same way. Got to be on the same page with your hunting partner if you're going to go out. And not only the mentally, but I think their preparation level too. Me and you, man, how many hours of podcasts have you listened to?
Yeah.
How many books have you read? How many YouTube videos? Like, I'm not talking like stuff you find on TV YouTube videos. I mean, like the guys that are actually teaching you something on YouTube.
Yeah.
And then the I know I subscribe to Row Hunting Resources every year. For 3 months, you get a subscription for $25, and he literally teaches you the biology of an elk, bulls, cows, calves, what each call sounds like, what each call means, when to use each call, doorway concepts, different strategies of different scenarios. And every year I will subscribe to that and do a refresher course. And just there's so much resources out there. But I mean, if you don't have a partner that doesn't put in a percentage of the time that you're putting in for preparation, you get out there and they're like, hey, I think I got this elk calling down, and they're taking the call out of the package for the first time. And you're like, wait, weren't you supposed to start blowing on that thing like 3 months ago to get used to it?
Yeah.
It's kind of like puts a little damper right off the get-go. But yeah, 100%. I think you got to find a partner that you guys are on the same page and is willing to put in the same effort at home and out there.
Yeah.
You know, I love hunting with certain people, but not everyone's built for the same types of hunts.
No, they're not. And even like what you said about the resource, I'm glad you brought that up, because like I feel like that separate, like, especially if, you know, us being at a disadvantage of living in the East, in not being around, you know, growing up hunting elk our whole lives or doing anything.
Right.
Like, yeah, I have, you know, I actually haven't used the row hunting one yet. I don't have to look into that one, but I've used, you know, Elk 101's or Corey Jacobson's course. I've used Dan Staton's Elk Shape course. I've used Mark Livesey's e-scouting course, and like anything and then podcasts and me interviewing people on podcasts, and like anything I can get as far as more information. I don't just stop and just do it 1 year and think I got it. It's just like constant doing that. And then working on those things. And, you know, and even people like I've been learning a ton from John Barklow, and just like the whole, you know, navigation side of it and preparedness and being able to withstand those types of conditions, and trying to do every little thing that you can, because even if you're not, you don't come out of it like, you know, you probably maybe soaked in 30% of what that was, you know, taught to you there, if that, but that's 30% more than you had before. And you might use a little of those pieces and start putting things, the puzzle together, I guess, once you get out there and training. And you're obviously big into fitness, and you're a certified, you know, trainer, and big into that aspect, and being able to prepare your body to withstand it, and shooting your bow. And like, it's just an endless cycle of things you can do to put yourself in a better place.
Yeah, for sure. And like we were saying, you know, every year we're learning something new. And I totally remember that my first solo hunt, man, I still had no idea what I was doing. Like, we're figuring out on the fly. I'm sure you could testify too that your first time out west, even with the group of people, you're like, all right, we did our research, but do we really know what we're doing?
Yeah.
You know, we're just winging it at this point, trying to figure it out. But every year we go, we're learning more and more, even to the point where, like you mentioned, John Barklow, I watch a lot of his stuff too, especially when it comes to, the layering system and keeping yourself dry and warm when you need to.
Yeah.
And man, I can't tell you how many layers of different Sitka gear or First Light or whatever I bought, and stuff I don't even use now, because throughout those years I figured out I only need this, and this.
Yep.
I don't need the other stuff. Makes my pack lighter, and I'm more, just as if not more comfortable, because I've honed in my layering system. And that comes with all the gear. You know, I remember it's 2017. I was still hunting out of my truck, but I think one week I was like, well, let me take my backpack and stuff whatever I could in it and hike back a mile to where I was seeing the elk the week before and try and do this backpack hunting thing. It was not good. I mean, yeah, that's when I got my elk, but it was not fun. Like, I did not have the right gear for it. And I'm like, well, this was like, in a big picture, it was fun, but that instance, it was not. I knew I needed to prepare a lot more. So honing in your gear is a big thing too. And you learn more as you go out there, but you can definitely do that at home too. Go on hiking trips, man. We live in the Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah.
The Appalachian Trail is right next to me. I've hiked almost the whole thing in Jersey on one shot. At least did half of it in one shot. And during that time, I was able to say, okay, I need this type of gear. I need this much food. This is how I'm going to purify my water. You know, you start to practice those skills. And then when you get out west, you're like, all right, now all I got to do is figure out how to get an elk, because everything else is I'm already used to doing.
Yeah. It is funny. Like my brother and I were talking about it on the ride back. He rode back with me and we're like, yeah, think about like our trips in 2016 and 17 when we were backpacking in and what our packs weighed and stuff. So I remember in 2017, I remember that was like the worst. Like 16 was bad, but I added gear in 17 for some reason. Like I'm carrying like an axe. You know, I've got,
Right.
you know, the stove with my tent, which really didn't weigh that much, but I didn't really need it for September. But I was like, yeah, I want a stove. I'm gonna stay warm. I'm gonna do this. And I had a Kafara Reckoning at the time, and it was freaking packed full of stuff. Like I think I weighed it at like 82 pounds, like once it had water and everything in it. Just so much stuff. And now, like you said, like my layering system is dialed. Like I have exactly what I need, nothing that I don't, and I'm able to take that in. And you know, and I had a pair of socks for every single day, or this, and I realized, oh, I get away with a couple pair and just swap them every day and dry out the other pair. And like just little things that continually started to build that system, and figuring out, even like I remember my first medical kit that I had was giant, but I didn't know how to use anything in it. And then I started, learning how to use that stuff and taking some courses of how to use it. And that shrunk down. I still have, things that I need in it. Obviously, I think that's super important, but like I was able to dial that down and have it in a place where I know where it's at in my pack and understand how everything's laid out. And it just, yeah, after a while, you kind of dial it in, and I don't think it'll ever end. It'll constantly be just a learning process and seeing what works and what doesn't from the gear standpoint, and figure it out. Because I remember watching some of your posts back in, was it 2000? What year did you go to Idaho?
I think the same year you did. It was
19.
2008.
2019. Yeah.
Yes, 2019.
Yeah. I remember watching your post there. Like I don't remember if it was the same time I was out there, if it was like when I had I don't remember. I remember seeing it, and like you were in some super rugged country. So like you feel every step and every ounce that you put in your pack. Like I remember I used to joke like, oh, why, a couple pounds doesn't matter. Well, it does matter when you're, trying to, do 8 to 14 miles in a day hiking up and down through those mountains. Like that's no joke.
Yeah, for real. And that was actually my first like legit backpack hunt. The year before, I was in Montana again with my oldest brother. We had an actual camp. We were camping at the trailhead and hiking in for elk. We got close a number of times, but didn't get anything done. But I really wanted to do the backpack hunting because I learned through those years, if the elk aren't where they're at, go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Find some new territory. And in order to do that was to have a lightweight backpacking system. Forget the wall tents, forget the grills, forget the coolers full of meat. You're only going to be hunting for 2 weeks. Just put up with the freeze dried food for that bit of time. If you really want a meal, go into town and get yourself a burger and some beers, which is nice to do after a couple days back there. But so Idaho was my first actual backpack hunt, and I remember the only time that we get to see these areas is on a map, an aerial view on a map. And you might bring up the topo filter and you're like, all right, that doesn't look too bad. Man, when you're driving down the trail and you get to that part where you say you're going to start going in and you look up at that mountain, you're like, are you freaking kidding me?
Yeah,
This is
every time.
every single time. Like, I think it's so underestimated. If you're not used to reading topo maps, try and figure it out at home before you go out there and compare the map to the actual mountain that you're standing next to. Because when you get out there, it's just, you're like, yeah, this is going to suck, but hey, that's where the elk are. And then being in that country too, I had no idea if there was water. So I had a 10-liter bladder I was carrying. Well, that's probably the heaviest thing that was in my pack. and that sucked. Fortunately, when I was about to run out of water, I found a spring up top. So I'm like, okay, well, this sucks that I had to pack this all the way in, but at least I know I don't have to climb all the way down the mountain to my truck to get some water
Yeah.
or go to the stream and get some water. But yeah, that was rough. That was some rugged country for sure.
Yeah. No, it looked like it. And then you ended up killing a bull on that trip, right? So tell me a little bit about that part of the hunt.
Yeah, so I bumped into. Well, I was talking to some guys. Man, I forget what his name is. It was from the Stickboat Chronicles. Sorry, I forget what his name is, but he contacted me because I had said that I was going to Idaho, and he lives out there, and I told him the area that I was hunting in, and he was like, "Well, your little word of advice, the elk are up on top." Okay, so and which makes sense because there's no humans up top. I
Yeah.
think I ran into two local guys the entire week I was out there, up on top. I ran into a ton of people in the valleys. But yeah, so I climbed in. I got up to my first spot. I set up my camp. It starts hailing. Every night it hailed. And then it stopped hailing. I climb out of my tent and I'm surrounded by these free range sheep with their big protective dogs that watch over the herd and everything. And I'm like, well, this sucks because I was maybe only a mile and a half at that point, and like there ain't going to be any elk on this side of the mountain. These sheep are coming around here. So I packed away a little bit, set up my camp, slept for the night, and I moved to the other side of the road and up on top of that mountain. By the time I got up there, it was starting to get dark. And that's when I glassed up this herd of elk, probably about a couple miles away at the next trailhead down. So the next morning I packed down, got my truck, drove to that trailhead, got in there. And that evening I couldn't sleep because there was just elk bugling all over the place. The next morning I got into them, had the wind perfect, followed them for forever. Then they got too far ahead. I came back in the evening and I couldn't find them again. Which now lesson learned. Hey, if you're on elk, don't stop. Keep going.
Yeah.
If they're not spooked, keep going after them. If you have the wind in your favor, keep going after them. Don't assume that they're going to be in the same spot the next evening or that evening because they could be 2 miles away at that point. Which the next day and a half proved that they weren't there anymore. So I think I gave it like 5 days back there. Yeah, it was 5 days. And I hit that mental roadblock.
Yep.
I'm like, man, my feet hurt. My knees hurt, my hips hurt, my back hurts. I'm tired. I'm hungry. I got to get out of here. Hiked back to my truck, went to my friend's house in Boise, spent the night there. They had a big barbecue going on. Looking at the map all night long, I'm like, where do these elk go to? And I just saw this little canyon with a bunch of draws coming down with the north-facing slope that looked like thick timber. And I'm like, they got to be in there. So the next afternoon, I'm packing in, and sure enough, as soon as I get there, one fires off, and I just see the whole herd coming dropping into that canyon. And I ran up, tried to cut them off, and they had gotten past me, but I had let a bugle go, and the entire herd turned around and just started filtering through at about between 30 and 40 yards. And it was like cow, 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 bull, spike, another bull, cow, cow. It was like they weren't even fighting yet. They were just a huge herd. And I finally, after I caught my breath and I was able to get a cow call out with how dry my mouth was to get a bull to stop on the window. And I pinwheeled him. And he maybe went 30 yards straight up and dropped. So that was at about 5:30 in the evening. That was awesome. So yeah, I found him. He didn't go 30, 40 yards. It was about 5:30, and I'm like, man, this is gonna be. I was about 3 miles back at that point, and I'm like, this is gonna be a long night. So yeah, broke him down. I got him down to camp, which is at the bottom of that ridge that I was on, about 1 o'clock in the morning. I put all the meat in some contractor bags and sunk it under the creek that was there to keep it cold and to keep any scent from bears and stuff away. Slept. Next morning was just all day pack out, back and forth until about 5:30 at night. I finally got out the last load out to my truck and opened up that bottle of whiskey, and I was like, "Yep, I'm done."
Yeah. I have not packed out an elk solo like that. Like all I've been very lucky that all of my Western hunts I've had people there with me that were able to help with the pack out. But we were actually talking about this when we were packing out my bear. We were going down, and it was me and my buddy and another guy we met there that was helping out too. And we're like, man, you know how like bad that sucks when you put that meat on your tailgate and then you realize I gotta go back up there to get that next load. Yeah.
I think the it's just what's good is that they got laws in place. And I'm like, well, I have to do it.
Yeah.
There's no saying no. I put myself in this position. I have to do it. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to hunt again. So it sucks, man. I think I was out of commission for about 3-4 weeks after that. Between my hips and my knees and my ankles were shot. And the night before, when I was breaking down that bowl, I was deboning the last quarter, and it was dark out now. And so I look up and I'm scanning every once in a while in case there's bears or something moving in. And I did catch 2 sets of eyeballs staring at me, like probably about 50 yards away. And I'm like, I don't know what you are, but I'm going to start talking really loudly to myself and finish this up. I put the back straps and the head and the neck meat and all the other scrap meat in my pack. And then I tied all the quarters to a fallen down little pine tree pole and started trying to bring it down away from the main carcass. Well, it was so steep that pole was like pushing me down the mountain and trying to outrun me. So it was just a terrible situation. Finally, I got about 100 yards away from the carcass, ran in my pack down, emptied it, ran back up, stuck all 4 quarters in that pack. And because it was so steep, I literally just had to lean forward and I was standing up. So took the rest of it right down to the river, no problem, all in one shot to get it out of there. But yeah, it's another thing you got to be careful of. Is like, man, I'm not the only one out here that wants this meat.
No. Yeah, that's another. What do you think there were wolves that were looking at you?
Could have been 100%. Could have been wolves. Could have been bears, mountain lions. Could have been anything, but I don't know what they were. I don't know what it is. It's like,
at that point, do I have any music?
Now.
Do I have any music downloaded on my phone that I could play really loud and then talk? And I think we've all been in those type of situations. Like, all right, I gotta be as loud as possible. I was actually just talking to my cousin. He's out in Montana, and he just killed a bear last night, and he was by himself, and it's in grizzly country, and he'd seen a wolf and all this stuff, and he's packing out in the dark. He's like, that I've never been so alert in my life. Like, just during those situations, you can act like a man as much as you want and act like it doesn't bother you, but man, it's difficult.
Man, I've been fortunate, or maybe I just don't know, but I have never seen a bear out there. I've always wanted to. I mean, we have a ton of black bear by us, but with grizzly, I want to see grizzly. Never seen mountain lions, never seen wolves. And then this past year, I just started sleeping under a tarp out there. I'm like, man, I don't know how comfortable I feel about this open door right here with my head right at the door for the first thing for a bear to grab. But I got used to it, and I love it. It makes for such a lightweight gear, especially for early season. But yeah, that was a little something I had to get used to. So I'm like, I know the bears are here. I was hunting with AJ Dubé and one other guy, and they of course were in the teepee with the stove and everything. And he's like, "Oh yeah, there's bears everywhere here." And there you could see paw marks and everything on the trees. And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm the smart guy that brought the tarp, with the open to sleep in." But
so
it worked out pretty good.
You've had a positive experience with running in tarp then?
Yeah, man, I loved it. A lot lighter, packs a lot smaller. I mean, it's smaller than a football, I would say. And then as far as propping it up like a cocoon, so it's the Cafaro Super Tarp,
Hmm.
and you can prop it up as a cocoon. Just break off some sticks that are the right length, and you can slip your sleeping bag, your sleeping pad. I keep my pack and my bow in there. Of course, I hang my food bag a little bit away from camp,
Yeah.
but yeah, it fits all my gear in there, and I've had it in the rain, and everything stays dry, and I'm very big fan of it, especially for getting rid of tent poles and a heavier tent for sure. Definitely saves on room too with the tarp.
Yeah, no, that is nice. I mean, I've kind of went like modular like with that. So I'm using the Seek Outside Silex, so it's kind of like a tarp, but I have a nest inside it. So it's
Okay.
still pretty I mean, it still packs down to like next to nothing. I just haven't been able to fully go like again, spaces on the side, head opening on it yet.
Yeah.
I haven't got to that point yet. My buddy that I was with, and when we were just in Montana, we packed in for just one of the days, and he just had a bivy sack that he was sleeping in, which was interesting. I don't know. I'd feel probably claustrophobic in one of those, but the tarp
I'm
seems
the
like
same way.
something
I would too.
that I'd be able to utilize. I tried like a small tent. I think it was Nemo made one that was like, I can't remember what the heck it was called, but it was super tight, and I just felt so claustrophobic in that thing. But like a
Mm.
tarp, it weighs nothing and you can get more space, which I felt like that would be something I could use more so than something else.
Yeah, for sure. I have the Kuiu, I think it's Mountain Star two person,
Hmm.
and I feel like I have more room in this tarp than I do with that.
Really?
Yeah, the Mountain Star, like by the time it says, they say it's two person, but I can, with a sleeping pad, it's probably me and my pack in there. That's a comfortable space.
Really?
I bring my bow and I stick it in the annex just to keep it out of the weather. But I definitely have way more floor room for in the tarp itself,
Yeah.
and it's level and it compacts a lot more. So I like it. I mean, if it's going to be crappy weather, I'll bring that tent with me too. I'll leave in the truck. If it's going to be crappy weather, I'll bring the regular tent. Or maybe if I guess it doesn't matter if it's cold because the tent's not going to keep me warm anyway
No.
at the level that I'm at. So
Yeah. That's where
really,
you bring your
sleeping
puffy
bag and your
gear.
layering system is what's going to keep you warm.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I've come to like with my sleeping bag system, I just use a 30-degree bag, and then I just wear my puffy gear inside it when it gets colder.
I'm the same exact way.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
light and you already have the gear with you. And that was actually something I learned from Barklow, where he was talking about that, and it's like, okay, this is so nice. I can just wear my puffy gear and my layers in, and then I get up and I'm not cold, and I'm just, yeah, I don't know. It makes sense to me. I did that just in Montana again here. Last night was like 12 degrees and we got like a foot and a half of snow, and I was good in that 30-degree bag with all my layers on, and I just wrapped an extra layer that I had around my feet because that's like normally what gets cold in there. My
Yep.
buddy had some down booties, which I think I may look into those if I'm going to do like some real cold weather stuff, because that seemed to be a pretty cool option. The only issue is, disclaimers, they don't fit in Crocs really well. So if you're a
Okay.
Croc guy around camp, then that doesn't work out. But
I just started packing them in this year, and
did
I'll
you?
tell you what, it's a game changer.
It is. It's worth the wait.
100%. I'm packing them in every single time
Yep.
because to take off those boots after being in them all day and put on a Crocs, it's the best feeling. It's awesome. So
Yeah.
totally worth the wait, definitely.
I'll tell you one thing also that which it's no secret, but for anybody new that's getting into Western hunting, Luco tape, which I learned that from Aaron Snyder years
Yes.
ago, and
Yes.
I wrap some of it around my tripod is like, and then I have a few little pieces inside my first aid kit, and then I keep the big roll back at the truck. But like I was feeling a hot spot, and I just kind of ignored it. And then all of a sudden I had this giant blister underneath my big toe. My socks had got bunched up there, and I put that Luco tape on. I was like a brand new guy.
Yeah.
I used to like go real preventative and like wrap like my whole feet like ahead of time. But now I just kind of wait until I feel something and then I get it out and put it on. But it really, I mean, the blister never busted. Like it was perfect.
It's for sure great. I always have the rolls in my truck or in my pack. And I made a big rookie mistake this past year in Montana. So I left early, a couple of days early, and I went out and I visited my friends in Idaho. And then I did some backpacking in Idaho. And I'm like, oh, well, I got these new boots. Let me try and break them in here.
No,
Don't do that. Yeah. Don't do that. I knew I shouldn't have done it, but I did it anyway. And I bore some holes in the back of my heels, and to the point where I was deer hunting in Crocs for the month of October when I got back because I couldn't put my boots on.
really.
So yeah, that's how bad it hurt. Yeah. So Leukotape, I was able to put some non-stick pads with Neosporin on my heels, and then Leukotape around it. And then also, like, I did the same thing. I always get the hot spots on the outside of my big toe.
Yep.
I'll just wrap a thing of Leukotape on it and I'm good to go. So I was able to keep hunting after that. It hurt a bit in the morning, but once it got moving, I was able to get it done.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, so make sure you break your boots in before you go out west. Don't try and bring in a new pair of boots.
No, that's
Luckily, I had my backup boots too.
We all do it, and like even just like it wasn't as big of a deal. But last year I got a new pair of boots, and I had my other boots for like 5 or 6 years, so like they were good. And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go out scouting for deer, and I did like a 12-mile day the first time I was doing it, and that was a bad mistake to do that. Like break them in slowly, wear them around the house, wear them out doing something, just get some time in them before. And it wasn't the boots' fault. The boots fit me good. It was just the fact that they were new and needed broken in. I mean, all boots need that. So it was definitely a lesson learned. Like, I don't know. I want to hear your input on this, but like for me, like going on a Western hunt, your boots, your pack, and a layering system, no matter what brand it is, just like having a good layering system, like those are like the big things for me that were like, okay, you need to have these. And glass is probably close after that, depending on what type of hunting that you're doing. But those were like the key gear pieces. What do you think?
Yeah, I definitely agree on that. Yeah, so boots because you're going to be hiking, your pack because you're going to need to eventually, hopefully, be packing out a lot of weight. Glass for sure. I mean, everyone has a price point too. Like we've probably built our arsenal over time.
Yep.
I know I didn't have the best pack in the beginning. I know I didn't have the best boots in the beginning, and I sure as heck didn't have the best glass in the beginning. But from narrowing down the systems and learning from experience, I was like, okay, you know what? I need a better backpack. I need a different layering system. I need to add this to my layering system. Or I need better boots, or I need better glass. So what am I going to do on the off season? I'm going to bust my butt, work extra overtime, probably not have any days off. Maybe sell some of my old gear, do whatever I can to build that up. I'm a proponent of buy once, cry once.
Yep.
I can't tell you how much money I've spent on cheaper stuff that either didn't last or didn't work, where I could have just taken all that money together and bought a nicer set of whatever. No, you might not be able to afford it right away, but put in that extra work, and the difference in comfort and the difference in quality is tenfold if you actually buy a quality item, and it will help so much out there.
Yeah, it's and like I always think of it like with boots. It's like, okay, a good set of boots can be $400. But if you bought a pair that's $150, that only makes it through one season, and these other boots that I'm having are lasting 5 years, like they pay for themselves. It's just in that upfront investment that's difficult. And same thing with packs. Like the first year I went out, I found there was a big Memorial Day sale Kuyu had on packs, and it was one they were discontinuing, like their Ultra 6000 pack or whatever it was. And both me and my cousin bought them for like $200 and some that was on sale, like really good deal. And his main buckle broke on his hip belt right away. I had a hole ripped in mine. I
We
went
probably
to
hit up
Cinch-
the
What's
we
that?
probably hit up the same sale because I got the same pack too, and I did not have good luck with it. I
No.
was like, nope.
He got his warranty. They did take care of him, and he's still using that pack somehow. And I went through many iterations since, and it's almost seemed like every other pack I've had since has been good. But I'm a gear guy, so I like messing around and trying different things, buying and selling and everything else. But it it was a learning experience for me for sure. And it's nothing. I mean, I think they make some good gear and everything, but it's just that pack was definitely not what was needed for that situation. And you just learn, you just kind of go through. And for me, it's like, I would rather have the tags and gear, but you'll learn pretty quickly that you'll figure out a way to make money to get more gear over time and building those things. My first year when I had started buying Sika, prior to even 2016. So I had the base layers, had a pair of pants, had a little thing, and I had, maybe I think I had some like cheaper rain gear at first and some other things. I'm like, okay, this is something I want to upgrade next year. And you just kind of slowly build I had a pair of binos that I carried for deer hunting that were like this big. They were super small, and like it got like within 2 hours of dark and you couldn't see through them. Like, they were bad. And then, then I'm like, okay. So I invested in a pair of Mavens, and then I started, going down this whole list of things. And, now my gear I feel is dialed, and I'm just like, I'm really being picky and choosy on upgrading things when I probably don't even really need to, but you'll get it built up over time if you want it and you kind of want to prioritize it.
Yeah, for sure. Like you said too, I'm not knocking any companies. Kuyu definitely, like, I love their tent. That 2-person tent is a great tent. I know a lot of guys that use their clothing and they're big fans of their clothing, but I used that pack 1 year and it's been hanging on the wall ever since.
Yeah.
And just to upgrade too, like you said, I started out probably with a pair of Walmart Nikons or Bushnells.
Yep.
That were probably $40, $50. Then I upgraded to a pair of Vortex Diamondbacks, $250. Man, awesome. And I've been using them ever since. I just upgraded to a pair of Swaros just now because watching certain YouTube channels, you kind of have to filter out different who's legit and who's not. And a lot of those guys, or a lot of times you see them, they got their spotting scope up with the phone scope, and they're, well, we just glassed this out 5 miles away or whatever. I'm like, all right, I got to get a spotting scope. Took the credit card and I bought a Swarovski spotting scope. I used it once. I'm not packing it in. I don't need it. The type of hunting, I'm more mobile, so
yeah,
I do like to get the vantage points, but nothing that I'm going to use a spotting scope for. So I'm like, okay, well, I already paid this off 5 years ago, 3, 4, 5 years ago. Let me sell it and see if I can get a pair of used binoculars, 10x42s. Sure enough, I sold it for pretty much the same price that I bought it for, and I just rolled that money right into a pair of binoculars. And it's just a matter of being able to manage your gear and manage your time, and you can find extra work to try and get the gear you want, but also don't get divorced or don't sell your house to try and buy better gear. It will come in time. So
yeah, and the thing you just said about like buying and reselling, like when you do end up investing in quality gear, if you don't like it, you can resell it. Like you can resell. Like I've resold all my packs that I've had for good money in return, there's a lot of different creative ways that you can do it and be able to pick up some different things. But yeah, that's a good point. And like for me, like the whole like binos versus spotting scopes, I use my binos on a tripod when I'm glassing. I'd say 90% to 10% with the spotter. And I only carry the spotter when I'm doing something where I really want to see a long ways. Like when I was caribou hunting, I used the spotter quite a bit.
Yeah.
High country mule deer. I used it a little bit for bear hunting, not as much as I actually didn't pack it the day that I found my bear. I saw him 2.5 miles away, and I have a set of 9x45s. You know, like so, like you can cover with a wide field of view like that on those binos a lot. Like if I were to like, okay, if I'm going to invest either in a really nice spotting scope or a really nice set of binoculars, I'm going to go binoculars all day first. Mm-hmm. And then if you decide that you want something different or want something more, then it's time to look at those other options.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the binos, just for my style of hunting, I haven't been on any hunts that a spotting scope would be more beneficial to me. And I've just found that the binoculars are, I don't have a good tripod yet. That's actually what I worked overtime last month for, to order a new tripod or a good tripod. I'm just waiting for that money to come in the paycheck so I can order it. But everyone that I've talked to said binoculars on a tripod is one of the best ways to go if you're going to be glassing from a high vantage point for a long period of time. And just our styles of hunting, my style of hunting is the binoculars were 100% more beneficial.
Yeah,
for sure.
So wait, I'm curious to hear what tripod you end up getting in your experience with it once you get to use it, because I bought like this Vanguard one back in 2016 and it's not bad, but it's a little heavy and the head on it is so terrible. Like you have to like break it like when you're running like your binos to get it to move, and then it's slopping all over the place. And I haven't put enough research in, and I feel like there's so many different options. I haven't figured out exactly what I want to do with that yet.
Yeah, I was looking around for a bunch of them. And I was running one from Best Buy, like the $40 Suncrest, whatever one.
Okay. Yeah.
Just save money and buy a better one. So I was looking at the Outdoorsman with the Manfredo heads, and then I actually used a Two Vets tripod out in Texas, and it was awesome. From using a spotter on it to having guys shooting off of it. And they make a nice lighter weight ones. They make different models. They make lighter weight ones, more compact, but they're super sturdy. And that's the one I'm going to order. As far as the head goes, I've been looking at the Spartan Precision stuff because they have the attachments. So like I do photography too, and that's what I'll use a tripod with also. And I have an attachment I could screw into the bottom of my camera and quick attach it to the head also and use it for shoots. So that's the stuff I'm gonna start out with and see if I like it. You know, whether I want to change the head or whether I want to change the tripod. I'll get the experience and I'll keep it posted on it.
Yeah, no, I'm really interested in that. That's one of the pieces of gear for the last 3 years I've had written down of like looking to upgrade, and then it gets too close to hunting season by the time I think about it again, and I'm like, I don't know, I'm just gonna use this one again. And like I said, it's not terrible, but it's I think I got it on Camo Fire like in 2016 for like $90 or something. It's normally like $140 tripod, so it's not terrible by any means. But it's then I start looking at the good ones and the prices of them. I'm like, holy cow! Like this is. But one thing I want to bring up to everybody that you said, you're waiting for the money to hit your paycheck to buy it instead of just buying it without having money. Like so that's
Don't put it on the credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you put on the credit card and you tell yourself, "Oh, I'll pay it off once I get that paycheck," it never happens.
Yep.
Everyone knows they're the same way. Oh, I'll pay a little bit off, but you see that paycheck in your bank account and you're like, "Oh, this is nice. Now I can get this instead," and you never pay it off. Wait till you have the money. Don't put yourself in debt for sure. I
mean, and I talk about like the financial aspect a lot on here, but it's like, so even for me, like, I think it's about every 6 months I review like all the list of things I'm spending money on, like on a monthly basis, whether it's just like, the typical your Netflixes and Hulus and all those different
Yeah.
things. But there's like, you start adding up all these things at the time. You're like, oh, $5 a month. Yeah, I'll take that. And then you look at it and you're like, okay, if I cut, two of these things out and I free up this amount, well, in X amount of months, there's my tripod or whatever it might be. And
Right.
there's so many different ways that even if you're like, oh, I already have a job that for whatever reason, and I've got child support to 3 different mothers, like whatever it is, like it, you can figure out different ways to be able to do it. But
It does help being not married and no kids, that's for sure.
yeah,
But even with a family, I know guys that they get it done. And it's just about, all right, so you don't exactly have to go out to dinner that night. There's another $100 that you didn't spend. You don't have to go and buy that 30 pack for the weekend when you're going to be shooting bows with the boys. That's another $25 to $40 a weekend.
yeah.
Just
Get a cheap
different
get a
vices.
cheap bottle of BV, suck it down, you'll be good.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah. There's so many different ways that you can just cut out different expenses and save for this stuff. And yeah, for sure.
No, that's cool. I'm pumped to see, because I felt like you and I were kind of on the same journey at the same time, like getting into this thing, and you've seemed to really hit the ground running with it and doing some of these hunts. The last thing I wanted to ask you about was what generated our conversation again, was about the whole traveling, like flying versus driving, and your thoughts on, like, when you go on these hunts, how do you look at the whole traveling aspect of it?
So if there's any chance, 100% of the time, I want to drive. The biggest thing that will stop me from driving is a time crunch or the actual distance. So I like to drive because I can have all my gear that I need, easily accessible. I don't have to pay extra for any baggage. If I need to add gear while I'm out there, I can buy it and throw it in. I not have to worry about trying to ship it home or get it home. It's all right there. Also, you have your coolers, pack all your meat in once you get your animal, and you can take care of it yourself as you're traveling home. So yeah, that's 100%. I would rather drive. Another thing too is, like, I like the road trip. I like driving out there. As soon as I get out of New Jersey, it's like my stress level drops, my heart rate drops, and it's just smooth sailing all the way out there. And if you have the time, you could take detours and check out the national parks, the historic sites, all the stuff that's out there to see. If you just want to go on an overnight backpack hike to maybe try and break in your new boots, you can do that somewhere. There's just so much to see out west that when I was younger, I thought that we lived in a bubble in New Jersey, and I didn't think I was ever going to be able to get out there. And now that I'm living it, I'm like, oh yeah, now I want to see everything. So driving gives you that opportunity to run at your own pace.
Mm-hmm.
I have flown before. I flew to Texas, not Texas. Well, yeah, I did fly to Texas, but I first flew to Alaska, which was my first time with the hunting gear and doing it. It was a little bit to get used to it. I was definitely worried that they were going to lose my bow on the way out there. But everything did get there okay. I think the biggest thing was then trying to figure out how to tote all the coolers and everything in the airport on the way home. That on the way home, I got an empty cooler when I landed back in Newark, and I made the claim, and they were like, well, what was in it? I'm like, half my caribou meat. They're like, oh, well, how much was that worth? And I'm like, priceless.
Yeah.
Priceless. I'm like, well, I spent this much for the hunt, and it had this much pounds of meat. So per pound, maybe $100 per pound, and you lost however many pounds. So I guess it's going to be that much money. They're like, oh, okay. Well, they put in a claim, and they found out it had fallen off the carriage in Seattle. And instead of putting the meat back in the cooler, they just put the empty cooler on the carriage and took off.
Oh.
But they were able to salvage the meat. They threw it in a freezer at the airport, and then once I gave them my address, they shipped it to me.
Really?
Yeah. So that was very fortunate and very lucky. Sometimes it doesn't work out that way, but
So you
it,
flew with
it's just
coolers up there.
no. So I have friends that live there, and they actually snowbird from Alaska to New Jersey for the wintertime. And they were like, just take these home with you. We're going to be down there in a month anyway, and we'll
Okay.
just take them back with us, or we'll figure out a way. So it wasn't like there were high end coolers or anything. It
Yeah.
was just like the igloos, you know.
Yeah.
But you freeze that meat in anything, you're only traveling. You're traveling for less than 24 hours,
Yeah.
so it's gonna be fine. Um,
Yeah. I mean, my meat was fine and I had it in a box. Like I had it in, like a fish box that they have up there in Alaska. And the hotel we stayed at the last night we came out had a freezer in it. So we were able to walk in freezer, store our meat in there, freeze it solid, and then just have everything wrapped up inside with like plastic wrap so blood wasn't running out and freaking out
right?
people at
Yeah,
TSA and just duct tape the hell out of it and then shipped it back. And yeah, my meat was fine doing it that way. So I got
good.
yeah, because like I said, it wasn't even though coming from Alaska, it's a long ways, but in reality, it was still less than 24 hours from this
Right.
time that it was out of the cooler there. So
Yeah, and I noticed like these coolers today, they're awesome. And my first time traveling back with meat, driving, I was like, I gotta get home. I gotta get home. I gotta get this meat cold or to stay cold. Even though I'd frozen it, I packaged it, froze it solid, put it in the cooler. I didn't know how good these coolers were. I get home, man. I had to leave that cooler with the lid open in my garage for almost a week before it all thawed out, and I actually finished processing it. Um, so now I'm like, okay, well, I can do some sightseeing on the way home now. If the cooler's, it's going to hang on to it, and you just keep an eye on it, and you'll be totally fine.
yeah,
But yeah, my second time flying was to Texas this past year, and I just had my bow case, my frame pack with my gear in it. And then I went to Walmart when I landed. I bought a small cooler. When we killed, it was big enough to fit all the meat in there and maybe even some of my other gear that I wanted in there to protect it. And that was my third check bag for the way home. And it worked out perfectly fine. So I didn't have any problems on that one.
So did you take your pack full of gear and you checked it then? Like just
Yes.
okay, and no damage to it or anything?
No. Yeah. So I had my bow case and I have my bow in there, obviously. I don't put the broadheads on the arrows and click them up into the top because if they can rattle loose and they touch one of your string explodes. And so don't do that. Just keep your arrows empty. I take my broadheads and my field points and I stick them in a plastic little fishing container or something. And I wrap it in some underwear or some other clothing and I stick it in the bottom.
Okay.
And then I pack all my clothes and stuff around my bow just for a little extra cushioning in there. Then in my frame pack, I'll have probably my sleeping bag, my food, my tent, any extra little gear that I can. And what you can do is when you get to the TSA to check it in, get one of the baby carriage plastic bags, stick it in that. And that way, none of the straps will get yanked out from the conveyor belts or whatnot in the airport. And it keeps everything tight. And in case of something might fall out, it'll still stay contained in that plastic baby carriage bag or stroller bag.
That's a good idea. I've not heard of that.
Yeah.
And that's why
Yeah.
I've always emptied my gear out of my backpack and put them in like a bag of some sort and then just use my backpack as like a carry-on because I was worried about straps and everything else. But that's a solid. I like that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I'll have a smaller carry-on, which I'll have my snacks, a book,
camera gear, anything that you don't want to
my
lose.
camera gear. I carry that. Yeah. Cause I don't want that to get tossed around or lost or something like that. So, and then for bow, for the most part, I don't think you have to have a lock in all the holes, but I do anyway, I just keep people out of it. Who knows what's going to happen. So, and then, another thing with flying is if you don't have a local friend in the area or someone's going to pick you up, then you got to rent a vehicle, and that adds on another expense.
Yep.
And it's really comes out to, in my experience, flying, renting a vehicle, and then the gas prices just drive your vehicle out there are maybe about the same, depending on how long you're going for.
Yeah.
If I'm going for 3 weeks out in Montana, 100% my truck. If I'm camping, I'm not spending money on gas. So it's way more affordable as opposed to renting a car for that 3 weeks. It's that'll probably cost just as much as the gas driving out there, and then you got to pay for your airfare, your checked luggage, and all that stuff. So,
Yeah, and there's one way that my buddy did on this Montana hunt that was better for flying was for renting a car. Is there's an app called Toro now, which is like the Airbnb for rental vehicles, and like you can choose the vehicle that you're getting. So he got like a Subaru Outback that had some off-road tires on it, and so you can get back into some of these places, because renting a car, unless you get like an SUV or something, sometimes you can't even get back to the trailheads. Where like I know like my truck, I'm comfortable with it and everything, but yeah, gas definitely wasn't cheap, but airfare is not cheap right now either. So it's kind of it washes out. I mean, it cost me driving back 700 and I can't remember 700, right over $700 just driving back, and then when you have, I don't even know, I have an easy pass. I'm not sure what the tolls ended up being, but it was a lot more expensive. So you double that, you're looking at $1,400 in gas just to, drive from Pennsylvania to Montana. And that does suck. But airplane tickets were like, and I just looked at it just for comparison. I wasn't actually going to do it because I was out there for 2 weeks, but you look at, no, I was only out there for a little over a week, but if you look at, say, $900 to fly from Pittsburgh out to Bozeman or wherever else you're going to fly out there, and then you got to rent a car, and you're looking, just say for easy numbers, $100 a day, adding on that, plus the gas, plus the insurance or whatever else you need on that, and it's just, I don't know, I just can't. And I like having my gear. I like knowing where my shit is in my truck. I can have backup stuff in my truck that you don't need to stuff in your pack, but it's there. And I've only flown, I've flown twice. I've flown with my gun to Alaska, which I'll say to anybody. I've heard about, packing a lot of gear around your gun, and that can be fine, but don't stuff it so bad. Like I took the foam basically out of my case and just stuffed all my clothing around it to the point where it was so hard to open and close, like that the TSA guy couldn't get my gun case closed again. And I was asking if I could do it because I was worried about him. Like, I'm trying to, and he's, trying to hold me back. And I'm like, no, don't fuck with it here, man. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was concerned, but, so I'd still do some of that, but maybe not to the capacity that I had that thing stuffed. I had mine because it was like over 50 pounds was overweight. So my bags were like 49.8. Like I had them things dialed down to like knowing exactly what was in there to save money on it. And then I flew to Alberta for a deer hunt with my bow. And that the bow wasn't as bad, as far as TSA and stuff, but in Canada, they do consider a bow as a weapon. So like when they had to like do your thing when you go into Canada, as far as what you're bringing in, I didn't put that I had bow wasn't on their list. It was like rifle and like other things. I'm like, oh, that's not on the list. Well, they do consider it, and they do get upset if you don't check that box. So make sure you do that.
I've never been there, but it's definitely on the bucket list to do something in Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's a learning experience anywhere. And when you are traveling, like whether you're driving or whether you're flying, like you need to have that mindset that things are going to go wrong and you can't let it bother you, and try to have some extra money aside that you're not, flipping out about it. Cause like when we come back from Alaska and we got out early and had to change my plane tickets, and they wanted to charge me, a completely other plane ticket to get back. And it was just a mess, and I had to spend a lot of extra money. And, at first I was like, holy cow, like this is difficult to swallow, but it is what it is. Like you have to acknowledge it sometime that's going to be the case. So.
Right. Yeah. And, I look at it too, is the tags aren't they're not cheap for non-residents. And even now they're few and far between. Like I put in for Montana this year, I didn't draw. I was just checking out Idaho to see if there was anything left over. There's nothing left over in Idaho. And so I don't know if I don't go to Alaska this year, I'm waiting to hear back from work here actually, see what my schedule's like. But if I don't go to Alaska, I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'll have to figure out some other sort of type of hunt. Whether it might be access deer in Texas or maybe something in Wyoming, I'm not sure. But you spend Montana's over $1,000 for a non-resident tag, and for a 10% chance at filling that non-resident tag. So it's like, hey, you're already spending the money on the tag. Save up a little bit more. Expect to spend that money on gas. So I remember first traveling out there, I was saving all my receipts. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm going to add up and see how much money I spent on gas. Well, I never do it. I never add it up because I know it's probably a lot more, and I'd rather not know that I spent that money. So
Yeah.
it's a necessary expense for the experience that we ultimately try to get, and just kind of got to add it, budget into your whole trip that you're planning out there.
Yep. And that's, and I try to do like with these hunts, like same thing, like try not to worry so much about the money as I'm like, I came back and, my yard's like, my grass is super high. I was cutting it and I have this old shitty mower and the belt broke on it yesterday and run down trying to replace it. I'm like, I really could use a new mower. I mean, this thing's old and everything's falling apart on it, but I'm like, got to keep that money for these tags,
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
for sure. Yeah,
there's some
absolutely.
trade-offs with it. It's not,
Mhm.
it's not all glory, but
Yeah, you brought up a good point about, just being prepared for the traveling and anything that goes wrong. And I actually never looked at it that way. Like I always did in the back of my mind, but I mean, yeah, what if my alternator blew or my radiator blew? Man, I'd be stuck somewhere where I'd have to pay for a tow truck, I had to pay for the repairs, probably had to pay for a hotel room if the guy didn't let me sleep in my tent in his garage
yeah,
while he's fixing my truck. They know it's an emergency. Who knows what kind of upcharge they're going to put on it to get it to put the rest of their work aside so you can get going. That could turn into a pricey factor, which I mean, there's positives and negatives about both flying and driving, because you can get stranded somewhere for 2 days and then that's cutting into your hunting time with a flight. So it's just kind of being able to outweigh the balance and have a game plan for anything to go wrong. And when something does go wrong, don't let it cloud your judgment, but take a deep breath and be like, all right, this is what's happening. How can I fix it?
yep,
You brought up John Barlow earlier, and just his whole survival mindset and the field craft that you can learn from him. I try to a lot of the stuff when you're out there is kind of, you can turn it up to common sense. But there's so much that you can learn from them about just shelters and fires and water purification, stuff to keep yourself dry. And man, the land nav, I just started diving into that because I'm like, I know one time my phone is going to die or break or something. I'm going to be left out there in the middle of nowhere and need to figure out how to get back. So I started diving into that a lot lately.
yep.
Yeah, there's just so much to prepare for, and just make sure that when you go out there, you're comfortable. But that a lot of times comes with just experience and
Yeah,
being uncomfortable at different times.
that's that the land nav thing is something I want to learn better. Like my brother knows it really well. Some of the training he had in the military, and he was doing a lot of the different land nav stuff without using, a phone or a GPS or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And my buddy I was hunting with, same thing. And I was like, I'm trying to learn more of that. That's going to be a focus of mine. But like, I try to have like even contingencies with that. Like you have your phone and, so I have, so I'll have the Spartan Forge app on there. I have my maps downloaded offline. Okay, what if your phone dies? Or what happens when you get in cold weather is your battery just dies really quick. And
Yeah.
if your backup charger is already out, whatever, well then I have my watch. So I have a Garmin watch that has maps on it. It's not it's not big to be able to really see, but I always mark the home position that I can, like where my truck's at or where my camp's at, to be able to have a backup. Then inReach is, and they have multiple different facets there, but trying to like have these backup situations so that if you do get in those situations, it doesn't add a whole bunch of stress, that you have plans in place to be able to figure it out, because it can turn into something like my worst nightmare is like a situation with my truck, way back in somewhere.
Right.
That's like, yeah, I have not, knock on wood, had
Yeah.
any issues there yet, but I can see that
Snap an axle in the trails or something. You're like, crap, this is going to cost me a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And you really do got to think about it. It's,
Yeah.
it's something completely different, but it is what it is, and it's part of the adventure, I guess.
Absolutely.
Chalk it up to that, and it's taken me a while to figure out. Kyle Hansen from Outdoors International, who I booked the caribou hunt with, was like the one that told me about. He goes, "You're going to Alaska. Things are going to happen. Weather delays, this kind of stuff." He's like, "You just gotta not let it ruin your experience." And like, it takes some like. You really have to remind yourself a lot when you get into certain situations to do that, because it can put a damper on things.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I'm sure it looked like you guys had a good group of guys. Like, we're going back to the whole partners.
Yeah.
You guys had a good group of guys in Alaska, and same with my group. I was hunting with my buddies that live out there in Fairbanks, and luckily we tagged out. I mean, we got dropped off, couldn't hunt on the first day. The next 2 days we tagged out. Well, the pilot couldn't come to the following day. Just so happened that following day, fog rolled in. We were stuck there.
Mm-hmm.
And we could not see 50 yards from outside our tent. Like, it was that thick. So we couldn't even go and explore and pick up sheds and find some cool stuff to photograph or fish or pan for gold, whatever the heck we wanted to do. Because we would never have been able to find our tents if we left the little knob we were on. But man, we hung out in the tent, we swapped stories, we made a deck of cards out of some paper and a pen, like figured it out. And then, the guy was able to come in and pick us up on day 6 or something like that, day 7, dodging thunderstorms to come in and get us. And, but okay, it sucked a little bit, but that was an experience I will never forget.
Yeah.
And it was awesome going through it. And you, like you said, you learn a lot from those unfortunate circumstances, but as long as you're prepared for it or think ahead of time, then it shouldn't be too much of an unfortunate situation.
Yeah. Yep. I totally agree with that. And yeah, make the best of it and embrace it, because there's not too many times in your regular life that you'll have the time to make a deck of cards and sit there and
right.
Yeah, it's I couldn't agree more with that. Or download some audiobooks and headphones if you can't stand your hunting partner after too long. So
yeah.
But
yep.
Anyways, well, Luke, thank you for coming on, man. I really do appreciate it. If you would, do you want to let everyone know where they can follow along with some of your stuff, your photography page, your regular page on Instagram, or whatever else you would like people to check out?
Yeah, sure. I'm mostly on Instagram. So my profile is Luke Gunther, just LukeGunther. And then I do have a photography page also. It's Lucas Gunther Photography. The Lucas is with a C, not a K. I don't do much hunting stuff on there. That's mostly, I just keep my photography and my hunting separate. But yeah, that's where that's where I do most of my activity and where you can find me more often.
Awesome.
On Instagram. Yeah.
Cool. Well, again, thank you for coming on and taking the time out of your day here. So greatly appreciate it, and I'm looking forward to swapping more stories with you after this hunting season.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a great time. Thanks for having me, and definitely learned a lot, and we're probably going to keep learning from each other.
Yeah, so 100%.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it was a great time.
All right. We'll talk to you later, man.
All right. Thanks.